Hello, thank you for joining me today on the Andyland mid-afternoon show. This mid-afternoon we're going to be, I'm going to have my guest on. His name is Scott Sowers, my name is Andrew Christian. My credentials for reviewing content include Father of the Year, Child of the Year, Employee of the Year, Husband of the Year, as well as my favorite person. I have much experience in all things, including but not limited to everything. So, today we're going to be talking about the movie Beautiful Boy, the sequel to The Office. Go ahead and hop on www.lightuniversity.com and buy my my 25-part disc series, Addiction and Recovery. Thank you for joining me today. Let's get started.
So, Beautiful Boy.
Beautiful Boy is the movie that we're going to be talking about today. Did you notice how it's Michael Scott and Holly Flax, his ex-wife?
Oh, that's who it was. I was like, who the heck is this person? I know her from somewhere.
So welcome back. Or I guess for the first time, we're going to be talking about The Office US, the movie, the sequel. It's the depressing sequel to Holly Flax and Michael Scott's marriage. Unfortunately, they get divorced. We find out.
Hey,
Michael gets
that's
remarried.
like every single sequel just ever. Like, there's a happy couple, and next movie they're divorced.
They're just divorced for no reason.
Yeah, it's like it's stupid.
So, Scott just watched the movie recently.
I cried like 5 times.
Really? I watched it about 2 days ago, but I've seen it a couple of different times. What did you think?
That was so emotionally traumatizing, but at the exact same time, it's so traumatizing because it's absolutely true. Like,
Yeah.
it's everything in there is just on point, basically.
There's a few movies in my life that I've seen that change the way you think about situations and stuff. And this is definitely one of those movies.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This one and Saving Private Ryan is one of those.
I still need to see that one.
So movies that are just like way too intense
Should
for
probably put my things on. Yeah.
for no good reason. And it has I always think Ben Stiller, but it's not Ben Stiller.
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell, which is a comedian, and he texted me and said, "I love when
You're a
comedians
actor.
pick up the drama roles.
Yeah.
Because they do so well."
Yeah, I was thinking about like Truman Show. I can't think of that Adam Sandler movie I watched, but one of those.
Gems. What is it?
I haven't seen that.
That one's good.
I'm trying.
That one's A24 though, so it's
really
a little intense. Yeah, it's a little intense, a lot intense. So, Beautiful Boy is actually the movie that we're looking at today. It's an Amazon Prime original, I believe.
Yeah, I did not realize that.
Yeah, it's starring. Wow, I forgot his name again.
Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet and Steve Carell.
Our favorite Dune boy.
It's a movie that deals with a lot of issues. It has a lot of themes.
Mm-hmm.
Including addiction, drugs, substance abuse, guilt. You see guilt pretty heavily in the movie.
Yeah.
Having children, parenting children, being children. So all that stuff is in this movie, and all of it just makes you want to cry. So,
yes. So freaking much.
I don't know if you thought of any other themes or.
No, that was pretty spot on, I think.
Yeah. So it pretty much is just a story. Do you want me to
Yeah,
kind of go over
It's
it?
your show.
I'll go over it so that the audience knows what's going on. There's obviously spoilers ahead, and that's if you want to go watch the movie, go watch the movie. Don't watch this because I'm gonna pretty much go over the whole story. So, it's basically a story about a dad and his son. Those are the two main characters. The dad's name is David Sheff. It's a true story, by the way. I found that out in the credits. I didn't know it was a true story until I just watched it.
Oh.
I saw the credits and it was like, this is where they are today or whatever. And I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So, it's a true story. David Sheff is the dad. He's played by Steve Carell. And the son, Nicholas Sheff, is played by Timothy Chalamet. And the opening scene, I still remember the opening scene. Like, we find out basically that David loves his son very much, and he's concerned about his son because he's addicted to crystal meth. Like, that's the very first scene. It's like, I'm trying to figure out how to help my son because he's addicted to crystal meth.
I like that part. That it's just gets right into it. There's no like, setup. He's like, yes, he's addicted. Like, just immediately.
Yeah. And right from the get-go, you can see the... This is why I love comedians. You can see the pain in his voice. You can see the pain on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And these comedians are really good at portraying that. And so you see that from the very first scene. And if you back up, they kind of start from the beginning after that scene. It seems that David Sheff, the dad, has a perfect family. He's got a wife, and he has 2 kids with that wife, and then his ex-wife or ex-girlfriend or whatever. He has the son, Nick, who's, we find out later in the movie, like, his perfect creation, and he loves this kid so much, and he's supposed to be this perfect kid. They have a really nice, really big, beautiful house outside of San Francisco.
I think so.
I believe. It's in a really cool, like, foresty area. And so, it's like this perfect life, right? But there's obviously something wrong, and that issue is Nick, his son. He's addicted to crystal meth, amongst other drugs. We find out throughout the movie that Nick started his addiction in high school. So he's smoking weed with his friends. He smokes weed with his dad, unfortunately. And it's just they kind of treat it like everyone does it. That's what he says, right?
Everyone does it.
Everyone does it. Everyone
Even
does
his
drugs.
dad.
I'm just trying stuff. Oh, Dad, how many drugs did you do? I did a lot of stuff. But his dad even says, you know, it's dangerous. You got to make sure you're watching out for that. And that's another theme that I see in this movie, and that really hit me, is this can happen to anyone. You know? Like, it's not like this kid was raised in an abusive household. He was suicidal his whole life. Like, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
He's a normal kid, and it just...
Yeah, and that's what I noticed, and what I wrote down, is that also Nick's problems, they don't necessarily talk about it besides the addiction. You know, he's saying, oh, there's other stuff in my life, all those stupid, meaningless stuff.
Yeah.
They never actually talk about that. And I thought, at least I'm pretty sure that they did that so anybody could relate to that, because especially teenagers.
Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about that kind of once I'm done with the summary. But it's, you know, I was looking out for, especially this last time, I was looking out for, like, well, why are you addicted to drugs? What's your reasoning behind it? And I remember his dad, they were sitting in the cafe, remember? And he's like, why? Why are you doing this? And he's like, or was it in the cafe? I don't know. Why are you doing this? And he says, you know, reality sucks. I hate reality. I just want to be out of reality. And it's like, that's your reason to, like, just demolish your whole life.
Yeah.
But it's true. And I'll talk about this later. Every single person deals with that thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it has...
Sorry for derailing you.
It has to do with religion, too. It has... and I guess we'll talk about that.
We'll get into that.
So, another big theme that I saw in this movie is the lying, the stealing, like not showing up for lying basically, and I don't know if you've ever had a friend or known somebody that is either addicted to drugs, has done drugs, is kind of just in that lifestyle. I don't know, stuff like that. That they'll pretty much do anything to fuel their momentary satisfaction. You know, they'll lie to you, they'll steal from you, they'll do all that stuff, even though maybe you're their friend or your family. So that's a theme that we see in that movie, and a lot of people have family members or friends that are addicted to drugs or deal with stuff like that, and they have to figure out how to interact with these people, you know, because they're not normal, but I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So, lying is a fundamental survival tool that Nick uses throughout the movie. He's constantly lying and stealing and stuff like that.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So, less than 10 minutes into the movie, I barely even got 10 minutes in. Less than 10 minutes into the movie, we see Nick go on a drug binge. He leaves the house and he goes missing, right? Dave is freaking out. Oh, where's Nick at? Nick eventually comes back home, drives home. He's sleeping in his bed. David finds him and says, let's go to rehab. So they bring him to the first rehab. You'll see this kind of pattern throughout the movie. Bring him to rehab, check him in. After 28-day rehab and then some other time that he did, Nick leaves the rehab and relapses, and David ends up going and looking for him because he's on another drug binge, making sure he's not OD'd, finds him in a alley next to a dumpster, picks him up, brings him back home. So that's the pattern that we see with Nick. That's a pattern that you see in reality with actual real drug addicts is binge, you know, go to rehab, drugs, that's just the way it is. And when he was talking to that doctor about meth specifically and the way that it messes with your nerves, like, you can't go to normal rehab. They can't do normal rehab because their dopamine receptors are so
screwed up,
dead, you know?
Yeah.
So after he goes to his first rehab, he does that binge, goes home, and he says, I'm done with drugs. I'm done, Dad. I promise I'm done. So he goes to college. Life seems pretty good. He's at college for a while. Meets a girl. But something's missing, right? He just feels that life is just not as colorful. And so he goes and finds some pills, takes some pills, and that just sends him right back into it. And throughout this going on, David, the dad, we see him going out and doing research, trying to figure out what meth is, how to deal with it, what heroin is, how to deal with this and that and stuff, and talking to actual drug addicts, talking to doctors, and eventually he gets some meth, and
I thought that was cocaine.
Was it coke?
I'm pretty sure it was cocaine.
Maybe it was coke. They didn't tell it. Did they tell you?
I don't think so, but
white powdery substance. Snorts it and has a night of drugs, and that obviously gets him nowhere. Maybe. I don't know. What was the conclusion of that?
I don't think it went anywhere.
I think it's just something that happened in real life, so they put it in the movie.
Probably.
So, after he gets back on the drugs, after college, Nick ODs, and he ends up going to the hospital. And after the hospital, they check him into a new rehab. And this rehab seems really good, you know. And he gets clean for, they said, 485 days.
Yeah. And note that this is the point where I was like, oh my gosh, that was a great movie. That was such a good movie. And then I checked the runtime. There's still an hour left.
Dude, That second rehab gets me every time. Because it seems perfect, right? So, 485 days clean. He has a nice weekend with his dad and his stepmom and his 2 younger step siblings. And on the way to his mom's house, which he's living at his actual mom's house.
Yeah.
Out in LA, or was it LA?
I can't remember.
I think it was LA.
I was having a really hard time trying to juggle all the locations.
Yeah, because there's like New York.
Yeah.
There's San Francisco. Anyways, I think his mom lives in LA. He's driving to his mom's house, and he decides that he just gets this urge. You know, after almost 500 days clean, he just gets an urge to go do some drugs. He's just not happy, whatever. And
that was after he graduated college, right?
Yeah.
I just watched the movie and I barely remember it.
I know. It's hard.
It's just
That's why
sad.
I took so many notes, because it's hard to remember all the things that happened.
Yeah.
After the weekend with his family, I realized kind of that and I guess we'll talk about this later too, but there's no real happiness outside of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That's what I was thinking too.
He's done the drugs, and it makes you happy for a time.
Yeah.
You know? Like, after I know people who have been actual drug addicts, and like the drugs feel good. You know, we think of them as negative, and they are, but to drug addicts, they're it. They feel good. You like it, you know, and so he's really happy. He likes the drugs, and that makes him happy. But what makes him happy after the drugs is, oh, my family and this and that and stuff. And we see even after this nice weekend with his family, that still doesn't make him happy. And so, go back to the drugs. So he goes into downtown San Francisco. He meets a girl from high school, this chick that he knew from high school, and he goes, "Oh, I'm really trying to party." So they go and get some ecstasy and have a night of fun together with this ecstasy.
Fun.
And so then Nick goes missing. His parents can't find him. So after this time of him going missing, David kind of realizes that he can't help Nick. That's what he's slowly starting to realize throughout the whole movie, is he can't do anything for his kid. And that's probably the most emotional, like, hardest thing to accept throughout this movie, because you have to, like, as the watcher, viewer, you have to accept as well that there's nothing you can do.
Like, I was just... I didn't like that. Like, I physically just did not like that.
It's
but
hard.
at the same time, it's like, he's right. He can't...
You can't... Just, like, you can't do anything. And
yeah.
So, because David, Chef, the dad, he's starting to distance himself from his family. Because he's so focused on helping his one son that he's neglecting his wife and his kids.
That's a good point. I didn't catch that on the first watch.
And so that's why I don't know if you remember, his wife is like, you have to stop. Like, you have to move on. And so, like, the most emotional scene, let's see. Or is that later? I think that's later. Yeah, dude. So, he meets a girl, right? Nick meets a girl. They're partying it up. However many months or weeks or whatever they're together, they're doing drugs, they're back in it. And they run out of money, it would seem. They end up going to his dad's house and basically breaking in, stealing some money or something, and driving away. And it's a pretty emotional scene because they end up coming home. David and Lauren, is his wife, end up coming home and finding them. No, Lauren is his girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Lauren is the girlfriend. So that night, they take the money, go buy some drugs, and Lauren ends up ODing. He calls the ambulance. She goes to the hospital, and we don't see Lauren again. Nick kind of just lets her go to the hospital. He's like, I'm not good for her, obviously. So that night, after she ODs, Nick calls his dad, and that's the most emotional scene. That one messes me up every time.
Yeah, that kicked me pretty hard.
Nick calls his dad and is basically begging him to let him come home. He says,
no rehab.
No, I don't need rehab. I just need to come home. I need to be with you guys. I need to be with my family, blah, 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 which they've tried before. And he's like begging his dad to do this. And I wrote it down. David, his dad, responds and says, that's not going to happen. I wish I could help you, but I can't. So, the conversation ends with David saying, get help, I love you, and I hope that you can get your life together.
I also want to point out for right now, we'll talk more about that, but I also like how Nick, he says, I love you too, back.
Yeah.
It's like...
Which is, like, one of the only times throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Like, we'll probably talk about it. I keep saying we'll talk about it, but, David ends up becoming, like, the enemy in Nick's mind. Like, you see that in the little cafe thing. Mm-hmm. And Nick is just so mad at his dad, which it's not his dad, it's him. He's doing it to himself.
Exactly. As
well as the addiction is doing it to him. So David, who's trying to help him, ends up becoming the enemy. So that's something that is pretty hard to accept. This whole movie is hard to accept. So after their conversation, David goes around the house taking down all the pictures of Nick. And that's kind of like... That's pretty brutal, too. It's obviously like... it's obviously like symbolic of David, like, I'm done. I can't do anything for him. Karen is a stepmom. That's the name of the stepmom.
No.
So after this happens, David and Karen end up going to a therapy session or whatever and trying to mourn their son, basically. They end up trying to mourn him before he's dead, and they end up saying, he's going to die. We know he's going to die. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to try to move on as best we can. So one of the last scenes is Nick in a restaurant, and he goes into the bathroom and takes out a needle and fills it with heroin and injects himself with the heroin, and then he slowly falls down and stops breathing.
I was just waiting for the credits. I'm like, oh my gosh, no.
And then he dies. But not really. So this is controversial, and it's not going to sound good. I'll just say. So he actually survives. He ODs. He ends up going to the hospital, and he gets sober. And we end up finding out at the end of the movie that he's been 8 years sober, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because he's a real guy.
Yeah.
And that was made in 2018, so he'd be 13 years sober now.
Hopefully.
I don't know if that's true or not. You can look that up for yourself. Or we can look it up or something. He gets sober, which is great. And I'm happy for the real life guy. For the movie, if it was not a real movie, not based on a true story, I would have written that he dies. Because that, I feel like, is the reality of what happens to meth and heroin addicts is they end up ODing and dying. Most of them. And now the big thing is fentanyl. Like, that is pretty ridiculous. And then we saw in the credits that it accounts the leading cause of death in people under 30 years old is
50.
50 is drug overdose.
Yeah.
What the heck?
That wasn't 2018 though, so I don't know the same statistics.
It's probably bigger now.
Probably.
I'd put my money on that it's bigger now. So that's the story.
It was a lot.
It is a lot. And I gave a pretty broad, big summary, extensive summary.
Yeah, like, even if you're still with us, you should still watch the movie because it's like it doesn't hit you just by saying this. Yeah.
So my thoughts on this movie. It's obviously hard to watch.
Extremely.
Addictions are hard to watch because throughout, I realized at this time, it's almost as if, like, they call it a disease. They keep calling it a disease throughout the movie. I noticed that. All the doctors and everyone is like, it's a disease, it's a disease. And I'm inclined to say, no, it's your choice. It's not a disease. It's not something that you caught and now you just, like, are immune to it. But the truth is that it kind of is a disease, you know, because he tried for years and years, and David tried for years and years to try to defeat this thing, and they can't. And most people that are drug addicts end up dying, not being able to defeat it, you know. And so it is a disease, and that's what's so hard to watch about this movie. Like, and people that you know that are drug addicts or addicts of any kind, is they're hopeless, pretty much, you know. People are pretty much hopeless, and there's obviously people that defeat their addiction. But this is what the main point that I drew out of this story, and you can comment on this if you want, is every single person, whether you're a drug addict, whether you're a normal whatever you are, whoever you are, there is a need to be satisfied. Throughout your life, all you're trying to do is satisfy this need. And everyone has their vice, basically. Everyone has their vice. And that could be drugs. For a lot of people, it's drugs, because drugs are really easy. You know, it's easy to inject yourself and then you feel good, you know, and then you end up with the hangover at the end. And it doesn't matter because you can just inject yourself again. Some people, it's alcohol, which is similar to drugs. It's easy to get. It's easy to feel good. It doesn't take much work. Some people, it's the gym. You know, it's true.
Yeah,
some people is like, I just live life to go to the gym every night.
Yeah.
You know? Some people it's work. Some people it's family, which is good. Most people it's family. You know, oh, what's your purpose in life? Family. What's your, you know, everyone has a purpose in life, and their purpose is basically just what satisfies me, what makes me the most happy. And that's true of everyone across the board. The thing is that there is nothing on earth that can satisfy you. You know, there's nothing. And that's why, what's that?
Ecclesiastes.
Like, that's why Nick constantly, what is gonna make him happy in this moment? Drugs. Okay, he's done with drugs. What's gonna make him happy? Get sober. You know, he wants to get sober, so he gets sober. And then what happens? Oh, I want to feel happy again. Do some drugs.
Exactly.
Get sober. Do some, like, whatever makes him happy is what he goes and does.
And yeah, and you said something earlier that made me think about that. Is that, yeah, the drugs in his life is kind of like his only source of happiness.
Yeah.
It's like, it's literally the only source of happiness. I don't think a lot of people realize that or address that. It's like, literally, that's the only source of happiness they have.
Yeah. And that's what's so sad about drugs. Like, we see in the movie, one of the doctors says that the more you take meth, the more it kills your dopamine receptors. So you can't feel anything.
Yeah.
Until you take another hit of meth.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only way you can feel anything, is the meth. And we all know that the more you take it, the less it works.
Yeah.
And so you take, you know, whatever, a quarter of a gram, and then you end up taking a half a gram, and then you like, that's how you have to do drugs. That's how you do heroin. That's how you do weed. That's how you do anything. That's how you do alcohol. And that's one of the big issues with drugs, and that's how people end up killing themselves, is because they just keep upping the doses more and more until it poisons them and kills them. Yeah. So he what did you just say?
I was talking about how drugs are like his only source of happiness.
Yeah. I remember him, I don't remember when, but he says in the movie, it's like when I'm not high, everything's in black and white.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I am high, everything's in
Technicolor. Yeah, that Notebook scene was terrifying. That was sheer terror.
It's crazy. Go watch the movie. Go watch the movie if you're old enough.
True. But even I know I noticed even for a rated R movie, it's actually like pretty
mild.
Yeah.
The stuff it deals with is intense, but
yeah,
I think there's a few F-bombs.
Yeah, like not even that much.
Well, the drugs, that's what makes it rated R. It's like showing the dude injecting himself, you know, so
that's not saying, you know, if your parents don't want to watch it, if you're a child watching this.
Yeah. So, as I don't know if you know anybody that's been on drugs or been in that lifestyle, but it's hard to watch this movie because it's real. It's how families end up dealing with these type of people, you know. I've been firsthand. I've had a firsthand account of, you know, watching a family have to deal with people that are on drugs, that are addicted to a lifestyle, addicted to whatever, you know, and there's nothing you can do. And parents, siblings have to accept that there's nothing you can do. You know, the only thing that can help anyone, whether it's drugs or the gym or whatever, the only thing that can help these people is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And our worldviews is that the world is broken. Everything is broken, and everything is designed to make you feel good for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like cars a lot. You know, I like speed. I like going fast, and that can become your god. That can become your addiction. That can become your satisfaction. I know people that's their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is I need to go faster. I need to go faster and faster and faster until I'm happy. And it's never enough. It's never enough drugs. It's never enough time spent with family. It's never enough money or anything. The only thing that can satisfy you is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Like, I was thinking about that one thing where he's at that meeting, he's telling his story, and he's talking about, it sounds really cheesy when he says it, but at the same time it holds a lot of truth, where he's like, he's at the doctor and he's saying, oh, my problem is, you know, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. And the doctor says, no, that's not your problem. That's how you deal with your problem.
Yeah.
And it's like, it sounds really cheesy, but it's very true, because there's a hole in a person. There's something missing.
I remember, yeah, to that point, yeah. Like, the world offers solutions to your issue that aren't going to solve your issue.
Mm-hmm.
Your problem, you're just dealing with the symptoms, you know, like the drugs are just like a Band-Aid. Let me fix your real problem. And that's that you're not happy. Well, how do you make somebody happy? You can't. They
exactly.
can't, you know? And that's why rehab doesn't work. That's why drugs don't work. That's why nothing works to make anybody happy, you know? And that's why people spend their whole lives trying to find what makes them happy, because there's nothing that can make them happy, you know?
Exactly.
And what were you going to say?
And yeah, it's just, it's for most people, it's sitting right there on their coffee table, like just collecting dust, you know? It's just, the Bible is just right there, and that's,
or it's in their closet or whatever, you know? Like, it's, the answer's right there, you know?
Yeah, it's, and so when you're talking about that moment, like after his girlfriend OD'd and she's going to the ER and he's calling his dad and says, what that one line that really stuck out to me was when he says, I need to come home with you. I know if I come home with you, you guys will give me strength. And no.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of the message of the movie is that, or at least part of it, is that the dad, the mom, no one can give him strength. Nick can't even give himself strength. You know, it's like
Yeah.
Proverbs 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city with broken down walls. It's like he has no self-control. He has no control of his life. He needs strength, not from his parents, not from his siblings, not from his girlfriend, not from himself. He needs it from Christ.
Yeah.
And so that was, yeah.
Philippians 4:7, which is probably my favorite verse. It says, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." That's for the saints. That's for the people of God. That's not for the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the world is not going to have peace that surpasses all understanding. Like, you know, they're going to have depression that surpasses all understanding. Yeah. The only way to have that peace is through Jesus Christ. And that's really the only way out of an addiction, too.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say this earlier. Like, the world, you can see people break addictions. This guy broke his addiction, you know, in the world's mind. But you just end up going from one thing to the next. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe you break your drug addiction, but then he probably started drinking, going to the gym. He probably started working really. Like, something has to replace that.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you end up killing yourself. Like, there's no purpose in life. You end up killing yourself. So you have to change your purpose, right?
Exactly.
And people end up changing their purposes a million times throughout their life, you know. But there's only one real purpose that you can stick with and that will make you satisfied on earth. The upside also to being a Christian and getting saved is you have an eternal destiny to look forward to. Like, this life is the twinkling of an eye, the Bible says. And it's just going to be gone like that. And so you spent your whole life doing drugs.
Yeah.
You spent your whole life with your family. Like, that's not going to matter. You know, none of it's going to matter.
Not saying that families aren't good, but
no, money. You know, you know. Mark Cuban. I was watching a video about Mark Cuban. He's a billionaire now. He says he's got all the money in the world. He has everything he ever wanted. He's happy, but the only thing you can't buy is time. You know, and so how are you going to spend your time? Like, are you going to spend your time depressed trying to find how to be happy?
Yeah.
Or are you going to spend your time with Jesus that is going to make you happy on earth and make you happy eternally?
Yeah, exactly. Like, Steve Jobs, when he died, too, his last words, or one of his last words, was just, "I wanted to spend more time with my family," you know? It's just this...
It's gone.
It's Apple, you know, one of the biggest tech companies in America, and... he wanted to spend more time with his family. You know? And it's just, ultimately all meaningless. Addiction is trying to find meaning. It's trying to find that happiness. And, you know, like I said, for a lot of people, it's their only source of happiness, which makes it so sad because it's just damning them.
Yeah.
And Christ...
And it's not even true happiness.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. It's just Christ is the only way for true joy.
Yeah.
You know, that's the best way of saying it, because joy is everlasting and it will bring you all the way to eternity. It's just druggies, people, just other addicted people that don't find their source of happiness in Christ, you know, whether that's the gym, pornography is one that comes to my mind a lot. It tears them away, and they're not going to find release from that. You know, that's what a lot of suicidal people think. It's like, oh, this is my release.
Yeah.
But then they go into eternal suffering. It's just, that's what's great about Christians and the security we have, is that we're sinners, okay? We're screwed up too. But in the end, we'll be free from that eventually.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just so many people just try to escape things.
So how do we... I guess I'll ask you, how do you think we should respond to a movie like this as Christians? and as well as respond to or try to help people that aren't Christians that are addicted to substances and or other things. We're not experts. I'm not a therapist. I don't have the answers on like you got to treat them like this, you got to do this, blah blah blah. I do have the ultimate answer though. I do have the ultimate guidebook for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone. So what are your thoughts?
Well, here I'll start with this. Artistically, it's spectacular. Yeah. Like it's shot beautifully. It's definitely a show don't tell kind of thing. You're just seeing all the pain, all the suffering. Like you said, comedic actors are just great at those dramatic roles because they use their face, they use their emotions so much for everything else that it works really well for dramatic because you just see everything. I will admit though, like a couple times when Carell is screaming, I get a little Michael Scott, and I'm like,
that's what Sophia would say. My wife, when we were watching the movie, she's like, all I can hear is Michael Scott.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah, I had to kind of remind myself, like it's dramatic, but you know he did a great job nonetheless. And Chalamet,
Steve Carell, if you're watching, you did a good job.
Chalamet too, he's amazing. I don't think I've seen a single thing where he's not amazing.
That I was gonna. Sorry to interrupt you. Timothée Chalamet in that movie acts like a drug addict.
Yes.
Like you think he's a drug addict. That's what's so.
Yeah, I was like, I was wondering if he was a legitimate drug addict before. It was like.
He looks like one. He acts like it's like
that one scene where he's talking about he wants to get the money. Where he's like that. I was like, oh my gosh, he's like full drug mode.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's the kind of people you see
I
on the
need
street.
Some money, Dad.
Yeah.
It's like,
But yeah, and to my other thoughts on that. So yeah, actually going off that scene where he's talking about he needs money, and Carell, Dave, he's saying, no, I can't give you that money. But what I thought was interesting is it could go two ways. He could actually use that money to go to New York, like he said he would.
Yeah.
Or he could use it for drugs. But both are terrible decisions either way. Because, shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Both are terrible decisions because it's still factoring into his decisions of just running away.
Yeah.
This whole time, Nick is just running away. If he uses the money for drugs, he's running away. If he uses it to go to New York, he's thinking, oh, San Francisco, it's got bad vibes here. It's New York.
Yeah.
It's like he's gonna
go from California to New York.
It's like, yeah, he goes to New York. Okay, you know what? I want to go to Colorado. Oh, Colorado sucks too. Let's go to Texas. He's just gonna keep running and running and running. He's gonna distance him.
Well, that's to my point of he needs to do whatever he feels like at the moment to make himself happy in that moment.
Exactly.
Like,
it's just New York, and you find that this kind of goes into your other question. I've seen that even in church members where, just people in churches, it doesn't feel right for them. They don't think they're getting the spirit. Like the pastor could be very solid, but for some reason they just don't feel appreciated, or they don't feel like the pastor is really helping them feel spiritual, I guess. And so their solution to that is to, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go to another church. You know what? This church isn't doing it for me either. I'm just going to go to another church. And it's like, no, you need to stay in your church and you got to talk. You got to help your church community. And, you know, it's just, I don't church community kind of stuff is big for me because I just don't think people care about church. Everyone wants to do all the crazy stuff. They want to build these Christian empires, but there's like, you need the church. You know?
The Bible, just to that point, this is not what the video's about, but just to that point, like, the church body is supposed to be a body.
Mm-hmm.
That's what did we just read? 1 Corinthians is 1 Corinthians? I don't know. But the Bible, Paul describes the church as a body, you know? Like, you can't say to your hand, like the eye, he literally says this, the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you, hand, because you need the hand.
Yeah.
Like, without the eyes, how are you going to see? Without the ears, how are you going to hear? Like, people don't understand that they have a role within their church and that they need to fulfill that role under the church leadership, you know? You can't just be leaving churches just because you feel like it. There's reasons to leave churches, I'll grant you that. Like, bad doctrine. There is actually no fellowship. There's actually no spiritual growth. There are some reasons to leave churches. But you got to make sure that you're doing that right, because you might be ripping the hand off of a church. You know, and I've seen that happen, and it's pretty devastating.
Yeah.
You know, and it's difficult for people. So.
Yeah. But you know what? I think we can bring this back to the main point is that, but when a church body works how it's supposed to, that's what Timothy Chalamet's character needed. You know, he needed to be in a church. Like, his parents, they can't save him. Not even the church members can save him.
Yeah.
Christ can, and that's what the church is supposed to do. It's supposed to bring you closer to Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what was just missing throughout the entire movie. It was spot on. Like, you see that in addiction. You see that in people. I don't necessarily have experience seeing people with drugs, but everyone has an addiction, especially kids, you know.
Yeah.
And they need Christ. I'm actually, this is one of my points in my other video that I want to record. But you know, kids, they're in their development stage and they're so lost and they're so confused. Like, after Nick graduates from college, he's just like, I can't do life. This is too much. Yeah. It's too much. And that's what majority of kids are feeling, especially Christian kids. Like, you know, I went to a private online school, and, you know, I would go in, like, Discord servers with these kids, and you just get this whole range of people, of these Christian kids, and just absolutely not Christian kids. Yeah. And they're just all dealing with the same problems, and they're all going that different ways. Like, they're going it through drugs, they're going it through pornography, they're going it to women or something. It's just... they're all trying to find ways to deal with it. Women, definitely a lot for Christian kids. Christian kids, they think, oh, you know what? I just need a wife, and that's gonna.
It's sex.
Yeah, sex.
Because I think, developmentally, you know, throughout puberty, boys start getting urges, you know, and women, they start getting these urges, and so they start going to porn, and they get addicted to that because that's what makes them happy in the moment. And then they go, oh, well, I need a wife. If I get a wife, this will fix my problem, you know. And it can. The Bible even says, like, it can fix your problem, but your problem is fun. Sorry.
No.
The overarching problem, and I keep trying to say this, the overarching problem for everyone, for the whole world, for every individual person is sin. It's your lack of a savior. It's your lack of Jesus, you know. And the problem with trying to say, oh, I'm just going to go get married and then I'll be happy because I'll be having sex, like, you're just putting a Band-Aid on the problem again and again and again. Like, oh, I need a new Band-Aid. I need a new Band-Aid. Like, you're not going to fix the broken arm. Yeah. Like, maybe you'll stop it from bleeding, right? But your arm's still going to be broken, you know? Yeah. The way that you fix it is Jesus. Maybe I took your point, but, like, there's an overarching theme for everyone. Everyone's dealing with the same problem. It's how do you deal with it in your own life? Yeah. And so it's just it's sin, and that's what everybody deals with. You deal that with atheists, you deal that with Christians. It's everybody. Yeah. Everyone deals with it, and like you said, everyone has their own way of dealing it. But anything besides Christ, it's meaningless. Yeah. And that's just all of Ecclesiastes. People need to be reading Ecclesiastes. I need to go read Ecclesiastes. Yeah, and so basically those are my thoughts. It's just
it's like when it comes to, I was thinking like the entire movie, especially when Nick and his girlfriend were going out and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, this is Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Like, that one scene where he's
with Jesse and
but yeah, when it comes to those kind of stories, this addicted prodigal son kind of stories, it's like, this is probably the best movie I've seen that does that story. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I know you said you didn't like the ending. I thought it was actually, I liked it a lot. I appreciate it.
It just wasn't satisfying for me.
That's the thing, though. There are a ton of stories with the whole bad ending, and I kind of like the good ending where there is hope. Like, there is way to get out of it. Like you said, though, without Christianity, without Christ, it just gets replaced.
Yeah.
But for Christians, that's the hope they get. There is hope. You can be forgiven for, even if Christians, even if you are addicted to drugs, pornography, the gym, it's like, it can be forgiven. But the only way you're going to get out of it is if you love Christ more than you love those things.
Yeah. I said at the beginning that there was a theme of guilt in this movie, and you kind of don't, it's not super obvious at the surface. But what ends up happening to pretty much everyone is you do a bad thing to try to satisfy yourself. You make a bad decision, and you feel guilty because of that decision. And so then you end up doing it again. You end up doing something worse, and it sears your conscience to the point that you don't even understand that you're doing something wrong anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a theme in this story for sure, of he just feels guilty all the time, and how is he dealing with this guilt?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, that notebook, that whole scene where he's writing down all his feelings, it hit quite a bit because, people who are addicted, the more they do it, the more they feel shame of it, especially Christians. But to get away from that, they do it even more, and they feel more ashamed and shamed, and it comes to a point where they can't talk about it. Like, it's physically impossible for them to talk about it or feel anything towards it.
Yeah. I think pretty much the only answer to whether you're someone that's dealing with an addiction. So I'll speak to those people, because I personally have dealt with certain, I guess not full addictions, but definitely things that take hold of you, and you feel like you can't. Well, I guess that's an addiction. Like, I've dealt with those things personally, and there's no answer outside of Christ. The only way is to really put your head down and decide that you are going to follow Christ. And that's a huge part of my testimony. The way that I was saved and came to Christ is I put my head down, and I decided that Christ is the only answer for me. Nothing else is going to make me happy. I felt that emptiness, that hole, that unhappiness, that depression, whatever you want to call it, and there's no way to escape it outside of Christ. And so you go to church and you listen to the sermons. Every day you wake up and you read your Bible, and every decision, life is a series of choices, like every day you have a choice to make. And whether that's to wear Red Sox or Blue Sox, or that's to do drugs again, look at porn again, to look at women, to crack a bottle open, any of that stuff, like, it's a choice. Everything is a choice. And so the only way to make those right decisions is Christ. And we just read in 1 Corinthians that God does not tempt anyone, and he doesn't let you be tempted beyond what you're able to get out of. There's a way out of every temptation if you're saved. there's a way out of every temptation. And I have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in that as I deal with my old self, the Bible calls it your old man, the sin nature that's still attached to you while you're in the flesh, God will help you to make the right decisions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's to the people that are dealing with the addiction. There's also those who have relatives or friends or people that they know that are not saved, that have addictions, and to those people it's the same answer, you know. There's no way to help them, basically, in and of yourself. You have to pray for them, and you have to love them to the best of your ability, and they may make you their enemy. You may be their enemy, even though you're trying to help them and you love them. They might make you their enemy, and so you have to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to accept that there is really no way for you to help them. And so the answer is go to Christ. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Like, he can make you feel the peace that surpasses all understanding. He can make you understand that there's nothing you can do. He may even save them, and you can pray that he'll save them. But sometimes Jesus' answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's another thing that's hard to accept. And this movie helps you kind of realize that there's things that you have to accept that you just can't change.
Yeah.
And the only way to accept that truly, to be happy truly, is Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is the answer, as always.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's my conclusion to this movie.
Yeah.
So, thank you for watching the Andyland mid-afternoon show. Thank you for coming on, Scott.
Hey.
I appreciate your time.
It's my channel, but yes.
For coming on to my channel that I own. I'm the producer. So, thank you for coming on. This was definitely a hard hitter.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the video if you stuck all the way through it. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace! It's like I'm a vlogger.